Hi, everybody.
Hey.
So here we are at the end of our 3-month journey with Beethoven, and it's just been a really wonderful journey for me to bring this music to you and to give you some insight into this music, and I hope you feel the same way about it. Um, these two works, there's no coincidence that I closed 3 months with these two works. Um, the transcendence of these two piano sonatas is just unparalleled in music history. They're just remarkable, remarkable works of art. I'm going to begin with a quote from Maynard Solomon, the musicologist, about where the meat of these works are. By 1820, Beethoven had written more than 60 sets of variations, either as separate works or as movements of larger cycles. With Opus 109 and Opus 111, he imbued the form for the first time with a transfigured, almost ecstatic content and a profundity of expression, which indicated that he had found in this basic musical form a new vehicle for his most imaginative musical thoughts. Thereby, variation form joins fugues as one of the leading figures of the late style, and variation movements appear in many of his late masterpieces. Variation is potentially the most open of musical procedures, one that gives the greatest freedom to a composer's fantasy. It mirrors the unpredictability and chance nature of human experience and keeps alive the openness of human expression. Fate cannot knock at the door in the variation form. Such concepts as necessity and inevitability need a dialectical musical pattern within which to express their message, whereas the variation form is discursive and peripatetic, in flight from messages and ideologies. Its subject is the adventurer, the picaro, the quick change artist, the rebel who, defeated, continues his quest, the thinker who doubts perception, who shapes and reshapes reality in search of its inner significance, the omnipotent child who plays with the matter as God plays with the universe. So, these two works, the theme and variation movements are the centerpieces of both of these pieces. And we'll start off with the Opus 109. You have the first movement, which is a very simple and plaintive, calm, beautiful melody. And he develops it little. The movement lasts under 4 minutes long. And then he gives you this forceful, sort of angry prestissimo movement that lasts under 3 minutes long to contrast that first movement. And then he brings you into the emotional center of the piece, as it's marked songful with heartfelt expression. And that's where he brings us to transcendence. So let's take a quick look at those, the theme and variations of the Opus 109 sonata. So here we are, Gesangvoll mit innigenster Empfindung, which is, again, songful with the most heartfelt expression. He's in E major, and it's very straightforward. The tune, the theme, it has an A section with a repeat and a B section and a repeat. But he has this marking, we saw last week sottovoce, which means under the spoken voice, a little quietly. But here he marks mezza voce, which of course is mezza, middle voice. But that marking rarely occurs in music. The specificity of his markings is really just heightened in these late works. He writes mezza voce, not sottovoce, and I don't know what the large voce is, but he writes mezza voce. And I mark here again, he has a figure of the crescendo to a subito piano in his expression here. And again, mezzo forte. So here we go, variation 1. It starts very slowly. The theme is very plaintive, straightforward, nothing really, terribly innovative or anything. It's just a beautiful little song. So here he goes in variation 1, molto espressivo, very expressive. And it's just slightly more complicated, the tune, but it's pretty straightforward as well. But here he starts where it's sort of gets you a little bit into a walking, where it's chuck, chuck, boom, chuck, chuck in the left hand. So boom, bump, bump, boom, bump, bump, and it gives a little bit of a strolling feeling with the theme. And he goes again, A repeat, and then the B section repeat, and then he gets into variation 2. And first off, we see lots of rests and 16th notes here throughout the theme, but we also see he throws away the repeats. All that structure is gone. Now he's playing around, and he writes it leggermente. Does anybody know what that means? No.
I'm surprised.
Lightly. Lightly. So he's talking just like the feeling. So this, if you look at this tune, all it is straight 16th notes throughout the bar. He just breaks it up between the two hands. Bup 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 bup. Do you see that? And that's all he's doing. It's like a little plunk 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 between the two hands, and they're just offsetting. And then he goes and he goes through the whole thing, and then he gets to the B section and he says teneramente, which means tenderly. So he's contrasting the light 16th notes here with the sustained 8th notes here in trills. And he only does that for 4 bars and then quickly jumps back to A. So he dispenses with those repeats and all that structure, and back to this chup 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 chup. And then back to the B again, contrasting, it's longer. And then I mark here back to the A section. He gives you these constant offbeats where it feels like a syncopation. Beatin' button bop bop button 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 but. He's giving you a little bit of unease with the syncopation in the left hand. Very, but fairly, again, straightforward. Variation 3, running 16ths versus 8th notes in the theme. Bump 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 bump. So you've got one hand doing the 16th notes, and then the tune up here in the right hand, and then it switches the tune in the left hand with the 16ths, and he's just flipping it back and forth. And again, piano, forte, subito piano, same techniques that he's used that we've seen. But then we get to variation 4, and look at all the markings. Etwas langsamer als das Thema. That means somewhat slower than the theme. A little bit slower. Un poco meno andante. Ciao, un poco più adagio con il tema. So it's essentially, this is Italian and that's German. He's saying the same thing. But here he goes into 9/8. So he's moving into, this is a duple meter, bump, bop, 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 dee da da dee da, which is 8th notes, and then he's doing triplets here. Da da dee da da dee da, dee da dee da dee da da dee da, and piacevole, which is another very unusual marking. Enjoyable, he puts in the marking there. So you see here he's again just with the same idea of the variations with the 16ths here. He's passing this 16th figure between the two hands. Da da dee da da dee da da dee da da dee dum ba da da dee da da dee da da dee da da dee da da da. Passing it back and forth, passing it back and forth. And then crescendo, poco, poco, crescendo, crescendo, repeats, goes back. And now the B section, similar to the 16th note back and forth. He's got these just running 16th da da dee da dee da 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 dee da da dee da da da. So this is da da dee da da dee da. He's just giving you a little fragment here. Da da dee da dum ba 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 ba. And then da da dee da dee da dee da. Look at all the sforzando now. He's adding sforzandi here. Sforzandi here. Sforzandi dee da 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 dee da. So and here's the peak back, and he repeats, say da da dee da da dee da, and he just keeps going and going, passing these 6 note themes here. So here we go to variation 5, and I have allegro non troppo, and I say fugue-ish. So here's Beethoven again doing kind of a fugue, but not really. He's got imitative writing, dee da dee da 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 da. So he's doing this. It's not a strict fugue, but there's definite imitation. And then he's got the second. He introduces the second subject of the theme. So he's interposing fugue and theme and variation into one in this variation. So, and he does that throughout this variation. And then again, he gets back to the tempo primo del tema, which is the first tempo of the theme. And here we have it's cantabile, which means singing, but he's making an accelerando. Can somebody tell me what an accelerando is?
Speeding up.
Speeding up, exactly. So he's not speeding up the tempo here, but look what he does with the meter, meaning the note values. Ba, 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 ba. Bump, 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 bump. Ba, 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 ba. He's speeding up the note values incrementally, creating a sense of movement forward without changing tempo. It's really, really wonderful. Then he slows it. He gets back here. He's got 30 seconds here, and then he's giving you. He's had triplets here, but now he's giving you duples here. Bump, bump, bump. So 2 against 3. Da 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 da. And then, of course, here we go for the pianists. What's known about these two sonatas are the trills. Look at this. Look how long he's got these trills for. Trill, 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 trill. And here he comes in the B section and he introduces the trill pedal. He's got this pedal. All he's doing is hitting this E. I'm sorry, this is a B, sorry. B, B on a trill, B, 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 B. You get the idea. He is slamming the pedal, and B is the what note of E major? 5, thank you, Gary, it's the dominant. So we've talked about dominant and tonic relationships. It's a dominant keys note of the scale. It's the 5th note of the scale. So this is a big dominant pedal is what it's called. He's hitting the dominant and trilling on the dominant, trilling. And then boom, back to the theme in E major. So he's creating all this tension over this time with all of these running 16th and running 16ths, but all amidst those running 16ths, he keeps on hitting B, 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 boom, back to the theme. It's marvelous. And that's why there's such an arrival point when he returns to that theme at the end, because he can't help but just suspend you this whole time. Look at all of those B's. Look at it. It's for a full page of music. And then some, almost 2 pages of music where he's just trilling on a B just to get us back home to the theme here. It's marvelous. Really marvelous. Any thoughts about what I just said? Any questions or?
Oh, and it's all based on 6 notes.
Yeah.
He did the whole thing on 6 notes. I mean, just how you can take those very simple, straightforward 6 notes and turn it into such a sublime piece of music. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's not like the theme is a really incredibly beautiful theme or anything. I mean, it's lovely as when it comes out, but it's, you know, you just look at it on the page and it looks very ordinary.
Simple.
Mm-hmm.
Really. Sorry.
I was struck by the changes in time signature. I don't remember that we've seen that before when you've been showing us scores. Maybe we have and I forgot.
A little bit, but he's a little bit, I'd say more free with that, Gary, where he really is notating the time signature very specifically when he's changing it. He could have easily have notated it as triplets, you know, and such, but he decides to change the key signature. He does it far more dramatically in the Opus 111, how he's dealing with key signatures. And I wasn't going to show you that score because I have a little surprise for you, but maybe I'll flash you that just to show you. But this is, you know, Beethoven takes this simple idea, and what's interesting about these variations is that it's all E major. Every single variation is E major. He doesn't change. It's just he's changing through the embellishment and his use of the theme, and it's marvelous, really marvelous. And I thought Paul's performance, this was, you know, one of those performances in my tenure. This was in March of 2005 where he did all three late sonatas, and it's just, you know, it's wonderful, really wonderful. We looked at in Opus 110. We looked at the theme and variation in my theme and variation show of 110. So I did touch on 110. I hate to just skip over 110, but I wish I could focus on all three because they, as I said in the show, these three were composed fairly concurrently, and there was question as to whether he thought of them as one entity. So. Any further thoughts on 109? Well, since Gary said, I'm gonna flip the script before I well, no, let me read a passage of Swafford before I show you the score briefly, and we'll see the time signatures in the score. But here's a passage from Swafford about 111. In Baroque terms, that first movement of the C minor is a sort of prelude leading to a sort of fugue. The movement proper, marked allegro con brio ed appassionato, fast and with fire and passion, rages to its end largely on the opening motive, sometimes varied and fragmented, most of it loud until a calming coda that seems to unfold the whole of the movement while preparing the next. The tempo is constantly in flux, slowing, speeding, lurching. This movement is the anti-Opus 109 and 110. Call it a representation of the turbulent, the disjointed, the furious, the manic, unheroic, earthly. The answer, perhaps Beethoven's ultimate answer, is transcendence, from furious and fragmented to a poignant song that seems to stop time in its course. The movement is labeled arietta, the tempo adagio molto semplice e cantabile, very simply and songfully. It is as if C major were discovered for the first time, like a revelation. As in the Opus 109 finale, here are variations on a simple and profound theme, but variations beyond any by anybody else, an unbroken flow that gradually increases in speed, by the third variation reaching a swirling rhythmic gaiety. The music rises and speeds further, reaching magical shimmering realms high on the keyboard, until finally and unforgettably, the piano is alight with triple trills. At the coda, a specter of the original melody returns, and with it the trills, the uncanny celestial light that shimmers on, finally making a slow descent back to earth and a simple conclusion. These last pages are music beyond words, beyond poetry and philosophy, almost beyond earthly life, but encompassing them all. The Opus 111 is truly one of the most remarkable pieces of music in music history. You know, the fire of that first movement and the sort of uncertainty tensed with intensity and fearfulness and anger, you know, that he expresses in this first movement. And I liked, you know, I found that von Bülow quote that it's the samsara and nirvana in Buddhism, the samsara being the struggle of life and misery and despair, and the cycle of that, nirvana being the heaven afterwards. It's really truly something. And here's Beethoven again, just as he did in the Fifth Symphony, moving from C minor to C major, from one movement to the next. giving that sort of resolution in C major, which has always been an important key to him, as well as C minor had been. So, well, I'll before I get into that, let's take a look at the score. I just want to just show what I was speaking about with Gary. So this movement is in 9/16. Yeah, Gary freaking out. He's 9/16. That's crazy. 9/16 per bar, which is really 3/4 time. But he writes it in 9/16. And we'll go down, and you can see that I did some analysis, but we'll get there. So here he is in 6/16 in variation 2. Okay.
Mhm.
And then here we go in variation 3, the boogie woogie, the jazz that we'll get to. 12:30 seconds, Gary. So I'll get into this. I don't want to give away I don't want to give away what I'm about to do, but yeah, his use of time signature in the late period is very interesting and somewhat peculiar, actually.
I guess.
So I was doing analysis. You saw I was working up the score as I've done, and I'm bringing you through the music. And I stumbled upon on the internet a master class by Andras Schiff about the late sonatas and this movement in particular. And I was like, you know what? Instead of hearing me talk about it and everything like that, let's see Schiff's masterclass on this movement. I think it's wonderful. It's 22 minutes long because he plays too. But I tried, I was thinking about I should chop it up or something, and I'm like, it's too good. It's way too good for me to chop that up. So if you'll indulge me, I loved seeing this. I really want to play you this masterclass from London of Andras Schiff talking about the last movement. And I actually bring it to where he's talking about the first variation, because the theme, it took a way too much time in the beginning, and he's talking about the theme. So he's starting to talk about when the variations start in the second movement of this piece. Hold on, there we go. Can you see him on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, here we go. Andras Schiff.
Oh, we've seen this. We don't hear him, Derek.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. Okay, hold on 1 second. It helps to share the sound. Here we go. Do you see him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you should be able to hear him.
8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2. So that's how you have to listen to it. Then the strategy is different from Opus 109. We have not that kind of character variations like there, but the first 3 variations, they constitute a certain unity. They are under the same arch. And Beethoven keeps the pulse of this 9/16, and in each variation he uses smaller and smaller note values. The first one is like a lullaby, a rocking iambic figure. The second variation uses half of these note values. like Alle Menschen werden Brüder in the 9th Symphony. And the next one is even smaller note values, and again we have come from the Apollonian to the Dionysian, and still I resist the analogy of thinking of jazz and the pre-echo of a boogie-woogie, which many people seem to feel here, but I really protest because I don't like the boogie-woogie and I love this music, you know. So, ecstasy, yes, but boogie-woogie, no. Of course, it's legitimate because we cannot forget our own times and our own experiences. So we are looking back at Beethoven through all these experiences. But I think we should not lose sight of this great concept of and this very spiritual feeling of this music. After the ecstasy of variation 3, there is a huge change of mood. Darkness comes. We have these little triplets in the bass, sort of mormorando, like the murmuring of the ocean. And above that we hear again just fragments of the theme, like sospiri, like sighs. Again, we would expect a mechanical repeat of that section, but Beethoven changes from darkness into light. And there is this dualism again, darkness and light, light and shadow, and the earth and the heavens, with the stars coming out. This is really unreal, and this transcendental music, it has got nothing more to do with an instrument or with a miserable piano. We just hear the human spirit. And again, we remember the melody. And just try to relate that to this. Again, this is the extreme high region of the keyboard. You cannot go any further, reaching for the stars. For the second part, of the variation, he goes back to darkness. All those suspensions, those sospiri, and the repetition again back to the stars. So extremely high and extremely soft, triple pianissimo, almost inaudible. That would be the end of the variation. And here, Beethoven, like in Opus 110, when he throws away the chains of the fugue, here he throws away the chains of the variation and comes into a free fantasy. Like in a big piano concerto. And then this trill, we come again to the significance of Beethoven's trills. Habe Dank. This is Beethoven's invention because he was such a magnificent pianist, and he invented this technique of playing trills and melodies in one hand, in two hands, then double and triple trills, and again, not decorative ones, but expressive ones. Let's not forget, why did composers first write trills? Because the piano is a diminuendo instrument. When I play a note, it immediately starts to diminish and to decay, and then it dies away and it's finished. I cannot do it like a violinist. I also cannot do a swell on it like a singer does, but it's a very poor instrument, you know. So then a composer writes a trill to make the illusion of a long note. See? Then I can make you feel that there is a swell and the tone is well and alive. Now, let's go back to the end of Opus 111. This one moment when first this trill turns into minor, and this step of the bass from B natural to B flat prepares the ground to a new modulation. We leave our tonality of C and go to E flat major. No? So to stop on this note because this is the most magical moment of this sonata. Nowhere else have we come so close to this feeling of the earth and the skies, the heavens. So there is 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5.5 octaves. It's a huge distance. It's the utmost that he could say on a keyboard instrument. And then before that we had this intensification of the triple trill, and then the trill stays alone. Now he has to come back from E flat major to C major, and this happens in a series of modulations using the falling fifth, Habedank motif. This is the low point of this modulatory section, and here we feel that we are very close to home. And indeed, he brings back our Arietta theme with a sense of gratitude and a sense of forgiving. Forgive me if I sound somehow sentimental, which I would not like to, but it's really such a moving example of a human being who has suffered so much and has overcome all those difficulties, made the most wonderful, glorious music in spite of his deafness, in spite of the miseries and tragedies of his private life. And at the end, he expresses his gratitude to God. It's a music of a believer, and it gives us really a sense of hope, how it reaches the end of this Arietta, which, by the way, is another movement that does not finish, but evaporates in air. Thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Derek. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
Oh, okay, that's right.
That's, yeah. I mean, Schiff, for those who have not experienced Schiff,
Trim that up a little bit.
he does these lectures and plays. They're just they're famous for going on for 3 hours. He's done it at the Y and at Carnegie Hall, and he's so brilliant. It's just you know, and I think he encapsulates the meaning of this music to, you know, those who are listening, but those who are also playing this music.
I agree with him that that third variation is not boogie woogie.
It was very funny that he just sort of got all sour about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Jeremy Dank thinks it's boogie woogie, and many others do. But yeah, it's really, I mean, the use of syncopation where it's he's never on the beat. So he's got the dee da 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 ba 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 and everything. So it's
Sounds like
I
Boogie
have
Woogie
a
to me.
question.
Doesn't have to be boogie woogie to be anticipatory of some of the characters. That's
correct. Yes, which is how I carefully phrased it in the show.
Derek, I have a question.
Sure.
Is this some of the first music that has, everybody reacts to this almost the same way in terms of it being celestial, you know, going from earth to the heavens and that sort of thing. That's almost always the way you hear it described. Is this like the first time that music has been written that would be considered that, and that we've all have our impression of what that's supposed to be like from this music? Or, I mean, yeah, that's kind of a stupid question, I suppose, but
No, it's not at all. I mean, this is, you know, what you're speaking to is a larger issue of Beethoven's function in music history.
I suppose, yeah.
So Basic is leading us, you know, on the heels of the poetic movement. He's moving to the poetry and to represent larger ideals and philosophical things in his music, rather than very strict, you know, adhering to forms and things.
And actually, I answered my own question because I'm just thinking of an early music piece where the celestial music, and it's the thing Philip Fusky sings in.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yogi.
Yeah, well, it's not, you know, he's not expressing a specific idea here. It's really about,
No.
yeah,
I
yeah,
understand that. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's just.
But how he goes up, even just him going to the top of the keyboard like that and spending all that time up in that keyboard. And then as I really appreciated Schiff highlighting that moment where it's so spread out in the range, which is, I feel that moment in that, you know, in that movement is really the one that gets me, because he has these suspensions that are, he said, 5.5 octaves apart. It's just stunning. And, you know, that looks ahead to Debussy, Debussy was quite known for using the extremes of the keyboard in his writing, most especially in the preludes, in the Sunken Cathedral prelude. You know, this is, it's an extraordinary piece of music. It's just, you know.
was struck by the beauty of the piano that this Fabrini, this Italian piano expert and technician who's worked on these Steinways, and there are a couple of pianists who use the Steinway Fabrini pianos, and it has a wonderful, wonderful ringing quality and a purity. I don't know what Fabrini does to these Steinways, but that's why he's earned his big name on the side with the Steinway logo on the piano.
Yes. Yeah, Schiff, you know, Schiff obviously hasn't been to the series with good reason.
Yeah.
No, he's out of our wheelhouse financially, but he's quite particular about his instruments, Schiff. Quite particular, as many of the great ones are. You know, and that's why we're very fortunate that, you know, an artist like Mitsuko comes to the series as a favor to me, with a discount, so that we can hear these great artists. But Schiff, if you haven't heard him live, I mean, it's almost an event every single time, and they're usually long. He usually packs a lot of repertoire into his programs. But
3 hours is a short concert for him. Yes.
yeah, it can stretch that much. Yeah. But here it is. You know, to close out, as I said, you know, Beethoven did write piano music after this piece, you know, but this was really the closure to his
Mhm.
expressive career on the instrument. And just like I thought that was another interesting thing that Schiff had said, that, and he sort of like, you know, I forget how he described it, his poor instrument, you know, that the music transcends the instrument.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, he got a little technical when he was talking about the trills, but that's, you know, that's the difficulty of being a pianist, is that the note, you know, gets softer after you hit it. And that's, the difficulty of piano is creating the illusion of legato and connection between the notes. And that separates, you know, the good from the great pianists, are those who can achieve that without over pedaling. And you know, the pedal is used to help that. But just I thought, you know, when I stumbled upon that, I just threw away my analysis. I was like, you know, we've got to just listen to Schiff.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Sure,
And I
perfect.
echo that. Thanks for bringing that to us.
Yeah, that was from John will know, that's from Medici, Medici TV, that has a number of master classes on it. Schiff has, I believe, 4 or 5 master classes on Medici, and they're running a special right now. I think it's like $70 for the year, as opposed to $125. So yeah,
So
and it gives you live concerts from all over the world. You know, they have quite an archive of concerts and things. It's a really great service.
So Derek, Marty and I have watched several of those master classes. I think they're at the Royal Conservatory of Music, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And so my question is, what's the music on the drapery behind him?
No, right, yes, and notice
I've never been able to figure out what it is.
I saw that.
I didn't even pay attention. I did see that there were notes there, and I saw
Oh,
it
yeah.
red, but no,
Yeah,
didn't pay attention.
Perfect.
yeah, or even like G clef here and there.
Any other thoughts about this piece or Beethoven as we close out the Beethoven Festival in general?
Well, this was the perfect way to end it. It really was.
Yeah.
There's no better way to end it.
Yeah, I mean, I felt I needed to go out with 2 of the, you know, from, especially with the late works, the string quartet,
Yes.
the string quartet and the sonatas. It was you know, the only way to really go out. But you know, we keep going back to Beethoven. Listen to his music. Listen to these late quartets, especially, over and over again. The sonatas, it's fun. They express so much, but they're a little bit easier to grasp than the quartets. The piano sonatas, a little more straightforward in their expression. So I encourage you to listen a lot to the late quartets as well.
Mhm.
My
Any
question,
other-
Derek,
Yes,
is,
sure.
where do you, after 3 months of Beethoven, where are you going next week?
That's an excellent question, Gary. So I've been scrambling a little bit. I've started to curate some programs having to do with virtuoso composers. So composers who were virtuosi on their instruments, and then writing for their instrument and other instruments, and then their influence, you know, their interpretations and transcriptions of other composers. So we'll be looking at Liszt, Rachmaninoff, Chopin, and a few others like Piazzolla. So yeah, so that's what's on tap next. I need to scramble tomorrow to put it all together, but yes, it'll happen. So, any other thoughts?
Thank you very
Happy New
much.
Year, everyone.
Thank
Thank you so much,
you.
everybody.
Wonderful.
Outstanding series.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank
Say
you.
Happy New Year
Year.
2021.
Thank you,
I'm
Derek.
sure will be much better. So
Yes.
we'll see you next Monday night here. And thank you,
Okay.
everybody, so much.
Okay.
Peace.
Thank you, Derek.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Take care, Derek. Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Derek.
Bye.
Bye. Let's finish the news.